Good morning, everyone. Welcome aboard to Creative Coffee, where I drink vast amounts of coffee and I try to say something profound. So, this is a completely unscripted show. I had absolutely no idea where this goes. I usually just wing it, but there's a lot of stuff up here, so it's usually interesting. It's pretty much rabbit holes all the way down. So, um, hop in, say hello. Um, Usually, I let anybody kind of drive where we go with this, and that's how we play it. So, with that says, I love you, and let's go. How is everyone? I am literally like I've already drank most of the coffee. Um, I'm kind of almost through this cup. It's in this mug here, and I got my seatbelt on, and I'm gonna see kind of where this goes. So, yesterday we mostly talked about how you should support your local artists, and not only support your local artists because it's a double gift, because whether it's an artist, a musician, a writer, a creator, or whatever, somebody that creates something in your community, please support them. It's a double gift because if you buy something from them, it's a gift to them, and it's a gift to the person that you give to, and you keep your money inside your community, and that's pretty much important these days. Instead of giving it to some big megacorp out there. And the other thing is, I know there's a lot of these artists that are out there, and we've got the Black Friday, and we've come to this custom where everybody gives a discount so that you can get them to your store, so that they will buy your artwork. Please don't use the discount codes. Pay what the artist is asking, because here's the thing: you think you're helping them, but the problem is that money that gets discounted comes from the parts of the production cost that goes to them. They still have to pay the producers. They still have to pay for the marketing advertisements. They still have to pay for the website hosting. They have to pay for the shipping. They have to pay for the materials. All those people still get all of their money, and it's the artist that ultimately doesn't get the money. And then you think that you're helping them, but in reality, you're not. And in the end, they just have all of these orders that they didn't make enough money off of. And, it's just such an infinite grind that creatives have to endure. So please support your local creators and pay what they're asking. Don't use or tip them. For me, myself, I don't discount my work because I'm pretty fair with my pricing, with what I have to pay to be able to keep things going. And one, I include shipping with my cost. And two, I always give extras. If you order something from me, pretty much plan to get extra prints and stickers and magnets that I'm going to throw in there that you can either use for yourself or give as another gift. So not only that, that's a third gift. I'm giving you get extra gifts. So, oh yes, absolutely, Michelle. Michelle, it's so good to see you again. Thank you for stopping in. I've been waiting impatiently for you to show up on one of the Creative Coffee sessions. You're such a pleasure to have out there. You really, really help guide this show in a positive direction. I sometimes get lost, and we never know where we end. So it's good to have you. Home is where my body is. So, but yeah, home has taken, as now that I've been here for half of a century, home, and I've moved, and I've lived in literally I have literally lived in every single part of Atlanta, from Buckhead to Sandy Springs to Marietta to Midtown to Decatur to the West End to Inman Park to Georgia Tech, the West Side. I literally have lived in every single part of Atlanta over 34 years. And, I was joking with somebody back before GPS and MapQuest was a thing. Back in the early 90s to mid 90s at the company, at the firm that I worked for, I was the GPS. Literally, everybody knew that if they were in some part of town that and they needed to get to another part of town, especially during rush hour, they would call me and I would be able to give them the quickest, easiest way to get from one point to another point in this town. So, I was also the phone number guy at the pool during the summer when I lived in between 1997, 1998, all the way up until 2000. I lived in this place called Arbor Gates in Buckhead, and in the summer we all went to the pool and we all got to know each other. And I was the one that everybody would ask for somebody's phone number. So anyhow, I don't know why that all went down, but oh yeah, home. So I am in Atlanta this week, and I'll be here for another week. I'll be doing soul dance this Sunday. I decided to stay for another soul dance. Soul dance is an ecstatic dance tribe here in Atlanta that I have the wonderful privilege of being able to go and paint live. And it's Scott Houston and Maya Lamberg are the beautiful patrons and creators of that organization and that community. And they give me the privilege to come and paint live at their events. And we just did a event not this past Friday, but the Friday before, 2 Fridays ago, with a musical group called Deodova that came from Australia, and that was 500 people. These are events where every single human being in the space is dancing, and we're talking 500. And I was really, really happy that we were in a very old church that could support us, because that floor was shaking. And yeah, so I decided that I'm gonna be here for another weekend, and I'm gonna do that again because I've been painting live now for about going on 15, somewhere between 15 to 20 years, and painting live at the ecstatic dance events have been what I've always been looking for. One, it's a sober event, so it's interesting. It's substance free. There's no smoke, no drinking, no substances, nothing. I mean, it's meant to be just purely sober, and you have 500 people that are sober that are all dancing, and it's such a different vibe. And I never thought 20 years ago that would even be a possibility, because I always felt that everybody needs to imbibe something, when they go out dancing just to kind of get the edge off and just jump out there. But the thing about an ecstatic dance experience is that it's billed to be, one, consent oriented, and two, non-judgmental. You have people from 6 years old up to 600 years old. I don't know if that's a thing, but that's just all ages, and everybody is into it, and everybody is dancing it, and everybody is accepting of creating the space for you to be vulnerable. If you want to roll around on the floor and bark, you're welcome to. And ow, yeah, that's a thing that a lot. I love throwing that to people, especially if I come across somebody that does this, it's too late for me to start anything. Like I didn't start painting until I was 32, and I've now been doing it for 20 years. And I started to feel the pull towards painting. I came up through architecture, which in itself is creative and it's artistic in its own way, but with architecture and drafting, everything is fine-tuned, precise, measured, sharp, straight edge, clean, no mistakes, very stressful. And the tip of the paintbrush is nothing but pure chaos. And you know, I had this thing where I hated painting. I hated painting in college. I did the minimal amount of paintings that I had to do for my multimedia class to get the grade that I did, and I got an A. And but I just felt that painting was just not comfortable, not my voice, and it wasn't until like my late 20s it started itching me, you know. You know, it started coming in like this sort of sadness, like I should have learned how to paint. I wish I would have given the time to paint, because I grew up in a generation that was told that like when you hit your mid 20s to like your late 20s, that's it. Like you're kind of cordoned off to doing what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. It's too late to learn anything new because there's all these young people coming up behind you and they're already ahead of you, and you're not going to be able to make that shift. So it just kept gnawing at me and gnawing at me. It also was my Saturn return, so I was kind of rediscovering myself. And it's just, it kept pulling and pulling and pulling at me. And finally, I'm just like, these intense visions and dreams just started bombarding me on a daily basis. And I needed to channel it somewhere. And somebody had mentioned to me, why don't you look at playing with mandalas? And I had never heard of what a mandala was at the time, you know. And back on the internet, there was no information except like I think Wikipedia was already on the scene, and they had some small things that were out there about what a mandala was. And so I started doing the research of it and had to go to a library and kind of look it up, and found out that the true definition of a mandala is an architectural blueprint for the palace for the intention that resides within the center of the mandala, whether it's a deity or a concept or a thought or an idea. So I immediately found out that mandalas were architectural blueprints, and coming up through architecture, I was like, I'm sold. Buy me. Yeah, bring it on. And woo, lots of coffee today. And I just got sucked into it, like literally, like you get sucked into the mandala. And so I started playing, and I went for about 3 years just doing black and whites and just doing it the way that I did it as an architect, where it was drafting. I mean, I was on a drafting table, and I would draft the mandalas, and it's kind of how my paintings now are so sort of seem very, very precise, is because I spent 3 years just doing black and white, just doing like really meticulous line work, you know, and shading, and just practicing with that. And everybody was like, "Are you going to go to color?" And I was like, I'll go to color. Is that better? How's that? Is that better? Let me turn down the birds, and I'm going to turn up the microphone. I hope that's okay. Let me know if that is better. Maybe that better? That better? All right. Let me know if I get too loud now. Awesome. So I did black and whites for about 3 years, and the oh, you're very, very welcome, and it's good to see you, Firefly and Michelle. I have two of my favorites in the room today, and thank you so much for being here. And damn birds! All right, tell you what. I'm gonna put the birds to sleep. Is that better? Oh, now the birds are really coming in. Hold on a second. All right. You know, I've had so many people complain to me about the birds, and like the issue that I have is like I don't play music because then I get called out with the copyrights, and then my sort of videos get throttled, and I decided to do nature sounds instead, and but sometimes the birds get out of control. One of my goals for season 2 or year 2 of Creative Coffee is I want to get the background sounds a little bit better. I like having something in the background. I kind of gotten to the point where music is a little bit distracting, but then apparently so are the birds. So maybe just a nice gentle stream might work. So I don't know. We'll see. It's such a streaming is such an adventure. There's so many aspects to it. But anyhow, back to the story. Hold on. I need a little bit more coffee here because I'm not crazy enough. I was doing black and whites for about 3 years, and then I started to move to color, but I hated painting. You know, it was just I just was not into the painting vibe. And I then started using colored pencils and colored markers. And the problem is it wasn't going fast enough because the visions were coming so quick that I couldn't capture them fast enough. And I remember there was a day that I went by and I was just sitting there and it's like, crap, I got to learn how to paint. But it was kind of mixed with this. I needed this, I had this urge where I was being pulled to painting, but I was afraid to go. And I was maybe about 27, 28 years old. And then finally I jumped into it. And I started, I basically just carried the mandalas over into color. And working in the mandalas was a really good tool to kind of just start and play with, where there's very, very basic rules. And then you can learn the basics of the techniques and of color theory in this nice organized playground where it's really hard to mess up a mandala. I've tried. There's some magic in a mandala that when you're working within the confines of the rules, that no matter what you do, it's going to end up looking cool. And it was such a positive feedback loop that I'm like, yeah, I can do this. And then, as I was going down those roads, I know it's cliche to say I had a dream, but I had a dream. And in the dream, I was painting a mandala. And as I was working out the pattern, there was a music that started vibrating from it. And then I felt that there was this music that was coming from where I was. And then as I was working on the mandala, that vibration and my vibration started syncing with each other until I finally painted something that got it in line, and the center of the mandala opened up and I shot through it like a wormhole. And this was one of those lucid dreams. And I woke wide awake until about 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and I was wide awake, and I had already started playing with canvases. And then I just remember I ended up painting for about 8 hours through the sun coming up until I passed out and went back to sleep. And I think that was that hump that I got over with. I was just like, okay, I know the direction I need to go with this. I know it's going to be a long road. And I originally, it wasn't really done with the intention that I was going to be a professional artist. I like at that point, I wasn't going to be selling stuff. I was just doing it for myself. I was just doing it as a form of healing, as a form of understanding, as a form of reflection, as a form of therapy. And, you know, it opened a lot of things up that had been dormant in my life. And I'm grateful that I kept pushing through it. So and then this was roughly around 30 to 32. So like roughly around 32 was when it really, like, the painting was, this is my voice, because, you know, I learned how to communicate what I couldn't communicate with words. I was able to communicate what I was experiencing on the canvas. And there was a really weird experience that happened at that time, where it was 2004 going into 2005. And I was living across a metaphysical store in Atlanta called the Phoenix and the Dragon. My apartment complex doesn't exist anymore because it is a Target now. But I was living there, and I was just opening up to this. And I picked the apartment because it had this big main room where I can just hang, and with these big long walls where I can just hang stuff up on. So it was just all of these paintings that were in there. And I had this vision. I was getting into Alex Gray. I had discovered Alex Gray at the time. And there was a painting of his called Theologue, where he painted what I was experiencing in my meditations. So he pulled me in, and I started studying his work. And then I was getting into some electronic music at the time. And the album that was just resonating with me was the Crystal Methods Vegas album. And it's the album with Get Busy Child. And I just was like, I was hearing songs and sounds and rhythms that I had never heard before. And I just got totally sucked into that album. I think Chemical Brothers were also on the scene with a popular album at the time as well. And Underworld was another band that I got into at that time too. That was fantastic. And that's also when I got exposed to Porcupine Tree. And Porcupine Tree is more of a prog rock band, but more sort of modern day instead of early 70s. But I remember sitting there and painting and having another vision where I was painting live. And this was before I even started painting live, or the idea of painting live, or even seeing anybody painting live. I got this idea of being able to paint live at music events, was this idea that was starting to percolate in myself. And I had this vision of painting at Burning Man. This was 2005. I had this vision of painting live at Burning Man with the Crystal Method on stage, and Alex Gray was painting live there as well. So I had this vision of painting live at Burning Man with Alex Gray and Crystal Method. And that came true in 2012. 2012 was my first trip to Burning Man, and I was in a camp with Alex Gray, and it was I was either Friday night or Saturday night. It might have been Saturday night after the burn, and Crystal Method comes on stage and with Get Busy Child first, and Alex Gray is live painting, and Allison Gray is painting there, and I'm live painting there, and my friend Visible Man's painting there with us. And it was like one of this vision of what I wanted my life to be that I had back in 2005 came true in 2012. And and a lot of it, because this was just the power of intention, the power of being able to have the canvas to project what my intentions and what my desires were as a way of focusing my mind of the steps that I needed to ultimately make that happen. And then it ultimately came true. And it was such a powerful experience in like learning how to get your will to drive your destiny forward. All right. And being able to envision the type of life that you want, and then being able to see the steps you need to take, light up like a Christmas tree and just light the path for you, and you take it. And, you know, that's kind, and then like roughly at that point, I was just like, all right, like 2005 to 2006, I started coming up with the idea, okay, I think I could like be able to do this as a living. And, you know, it was roughly around 2006, I ran into a problem where the thing that I was struggling with on the canvas was I can start paintings, but I couldn't finish the paintings. And I didn't know how to finish the paintings. And like, I could start a painting and I can work on it for 8 to 12 hours until I pass out. And it was exhilarating. But then the next day, I didn't know how to get back onto the canvas and keep the painting going. So I ended up having about like 20 paintings that were all started, but nothing was finished. And then that led into 2006. And then in 2006, towards the end of 2006, I was really becoming aware of this problem, this obstacle that I had. And I decided that for 2007, I was going to give myself one goal, one painting to do, one painting to finish by the end of the year. And it was the 4 foot, it was this size, the big 4 foot by 4 foot size. It's not that painting. This is actually a sibling of that painting. But I decided I was going to do an astrological wheel, and it was going to be 4 foot by 4 foot. And I was going to give myself the entire year to just focus on that one painting. And if I was unable to finish that painting by the end of the year, it was going to be, okay, I'm good, but I don't have the chops to be a professional because I wasn't able to finish. And because how am I going to sell painting if I can't finish it? So anyhow, we were all on LiveJournal at the time. It was right before Facebook came around. And me and my friends were all on LiveJournal. And I basically, at the end of 2006, just basically stated, I'm going to do a masterwork for 2007. That was my goal for my resolution for 2007, you know, to finish a painting. And I ended up, not only that, I ended up tracking the progress of it on LiveJournal. It's still out there somewhere. I have to find the link for it because the artwork's interesting, but my writing was very noob. I wasn't much of a writer back then. I feel at least confident in my writing these days, but back then, you know, like my writing was very sort of middle school level, and but I pushed through and I kept doing it, and I worked on it like as much as I could, and then I would post the progress photos up on LiveJournal and talk about what I was. And it's so funny because if you look at that painting now, there's probably 30 different layers in different directions that that painting went, because I kept changing. I was just like, no, it's got to go this way. It's got to go that way. But it was good because instead of like worrying about this painting or that painting and not finish this painting, I put all my focus in one direction and just did that. And then at the end of the year, I had the painting finished, and it was the first masterwork and that was 2007, and that was the Wandering Wheel. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. And then in 2008, that's when I did the Sunstone, and the Sunstone was the second one, and then Kalachakra was the third. This one was the fourth painting. This is Music of the Spheres. This was the fourth. And then I started to peter away from it. I did it for 3 to 4 years solid. And then I ended up getting distracted by a girlfriend. And I kind of lost the edge a little bit. But I was able to get at least 7 of them started. And the one after this one is Sophia, then there's Indra's Net, and then there is the Big Bang, and then there's the Book of the Dead. And those are like still like, and then as you get further down that line, which kind of took me up to about 2013, 2014, you know, I kind of got like, the wind was out of those sails, and I was working on other things. And but now I'm now with like the hexagons that you see that I've got out there, like I'm going back, and each of the books that you see with my magnets and hexagon stickers, each of those books has 8 pieces, but like the main piece that's associated with each of the books is one of these paintings that started back in 2007. So book 1 has Wandering Wheel as the first piece. So like all of those, and I'm going to keep working that forward until I'm gone. So like I've got the next 4 years of books kind of mapped out of, and then ultimately what it's all leading, those hexagons are all leading to is I'm hoping that by the summer of next year, I will finally have enough of them where I will be able to put them out as a card deck, sort of kind of like an oracle deck, but not an oracle deck. I don't want to rely too heavy on the mystical, because a lot of it is still grounded within a sense of the science of things, and it's more oriented towards stories. You know, it's stories that lead us forward. It's like all stories of creations, like different creation stories, whether it's spiritual, religious, scientific, or fiction. You know, just drawing all of them to kind of show all of the patterns are all kind of linked up and similar between all of them, and that they're all leading us in the same direction. They're all all of the stories all of the different creation stories are all pointing us in the same direction and showing us that and linking all of us together. So that's ultimately the whole idea of the Infinite Between series, or what I call the Infinite Between, or which is my body of work really. And, you know, it's like, I knew where I am now, I knew I wanted to be 20 years ago. But I had no idea how to get there. I had no idea the format. I had no idea the context. Everything was a struggle. Everything I had to figure out along the way. Everything was an ever evolving process that just rolled itself forward, where, okay, I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm going to figure it out along the way. And it's ultimately what's kind of got me into the whole idea of thinking of myself as this vessel in this big chaos ocean. And what's important is me maintaining the vessel that I'm in and making sure that that vessel can handle any storm that gets thrown at me, or I can adapt and I can move forward. Like, you know, and Wandering Wheel was a painting that made me realize that, like, so like with Wandering Wheel, and I wish I had a picture of it here, was an astrological wheel, and it's actually out of alignment because I painted it according to traditional astrology. And when I was painting that painting, that's when I came to the realization that everything that you know as traditional astrology is out of alignment by 23 degrees. And that's due to the progression of the equinox, or the point of Aries, where, like, right now, spring begins March 31st or March 20th. And that's actually in Pisces. And that point is going backwards. But we think of Aries as being the beginning of the astrological wheel, but it's really not anymore. But the thing is, it was when it was first created back in ancient Babylon, and that's like basically where we get astrology from, or Western astrology comes from Babylon. And it's because of the progression of the equinoxes, or the spring equinox, slowly moving around what's called the Great Year, which lasts about 24,000 years. And this is where you hear, where on the dawning of the age of Aquarius, it's the point of Aries, or the spring equinox, slowly moving into the house of Aquarius. And right now it's at the end of Pisces. And it's not in Aries anymore, which is where it started, because since it started 2,000 years ago, that spring equinox has migrated across the calendar about 23 degrees. So it's out of alignment. So that's where I came up with the concept of calling it the Wandering Wheel, and thinking of the astrological wheel as a vessel that needed to adapt and adjust and constantly realigned itself to its current reckoning, and not be a fixed static point in space. And I remember I was at Burning Man in 2013. And in 2013, it was really cool. There was this astronomical camp that set up a telescope all the way out in the deep Pleiades, where they would take you and do astronomical lectures at Burning Man, and you would be able to look at the telescope, and every night they would look at something different. And I remember getting into an argument with somebody about astrology, and at this time I had already realigned myself to the wheel. And because, like, what'll happen is you'll look in an astrological book, and you look up in the epidermis, not the epidermis, God, what's it called? Basically, there's this list that tells you on what date where the planets are in each of the signs, and you look it up, and then it'll tell you, okay, Saturn is in this sign. And the problem is it's wrong. 95% of astrologers, hold on a second. I got Google here. God, this is gonna kill me. Why can't I find you? Come on, God, give it to me. It's oh God, I can't think of the name of. Anyhow, I'm not going to worry about it. It depends. It depends on the date that you're born. If you're born towards the end of the astrological sign, you are true to that sign. If you're born at the beginning of that sign, you're actually the sign. The sign gets spun forward. 12-12, you're kind of on the edge. You're kind of on the edge where it's close, where you're sort of on the cusp of Sagittarius and Capricorn. It's not epidermis, it's not epidural, it's not ephemeral. Ephemeral is something different. It's the name of a catalog of the planets' locations, and I can't think of that at the moment. So, and it's okay, and there's something to it. It's not like all of a sudden you're something different. It's a gradual evolution, and the way that it works is you're evolving towards the sign that comes before you. So, like as an Aries, I'm evolving towards Pisces, and like an example is within Aries, one of our biggest issues that we struggle with is our ego. We have a big ego problem. And part of what Pisces is actually one of the signs where they've got other issues, but one of the things that's solid with them is that their ego is in check. Their ego is in balance. So as an Aries, I'm evolving towards having my ego in balance. So with Sagittarius, so the way that it would work with Sagittarius, it's sort of like the pinnacle of philosophy. You're ruled by Jupiter. It's about knowing all of the things. All right, knowing everything. Being completely sort of scholarly in knowing everything. What Capricorn is okay. You got all of these theories. How do you put them into reality? So Capricorn is taking all of this ideas that you have, all of these great ideas, all these things that you come up with your imagination that are built on the highest level of philosophy that you can find. Capricorn, which you're evolving towards, is how to bring those into reality, how to do it so that it works, so that it has an impact, so that you can plow the soil, so that you can grow those things, so you can build those things. Capricorns are great at building. They're great at doing. They're great at building those foundations. Whereas, I don't know, does that make sense? That's how the wheel works. And so I got into this fight at Burning Man with this person that was like, God, the name is still escaping me. Ephemeris. I think it's Ephemeris. Ephemeris. Let me see if that's correct. That's it. Ephemeris. Not epidural. All right. So Ephemeris is what it's called, not ephemeral. It's just the words are so interconnected because of the language, but they just it's like with chemicals, like one syllable can be off and it'll be the difference between dying and living. So Ephemeris, so they basically had their ephemeris with them, and they were talking about where the planets were, and they're talking about, I remember they're like, and Jupiter is in Virgo and it's doing this. And I went to them, I'm like, no, Jupiter is not in Virgo at the moment. Jupiter is in Leo. And they're like, no, Jupiter is in Virgo. I'm like, no, Jupiter is in Leo. And then they pulled out their ephemeris and they're like, look, it says it right here that Jupiter is in Virgo right now at this time. I said, look up in the sky. There's Jupiter. It's in Leo. And their mind was blown. because they had no understanding that that was the case. And there it was. In reality, in current time, Jupiter was in Leo and not Virgo. And the entire astrological community is wrong in that sense, you know? And you can't, and it's so funny because you can literally point to the sky and show them the reality of the situation and they'll still deny it. And it's just crazy how we adhere and we just like anchor ourselves in these false realities and just carry them, and they get passed down from generation to generation to generation and never get corrected. So my painting, The Wandering Wheel, was me fixing that. And it's basically called Wandering Wheel, to think of the astrological wheel as this vessel or this wheel that spins and moves forward, that constantly is changing and adjusting as it goes. And it's not something in static space that gets fixed. And I think a lot of the problems that we're experiencing right now, not only with that change, but the difference between people that still are stuck in their minds in the 20th century and haven't realized that we're already a quarter of the way through the 21st century, but in their minds, they're still overlying this fantasy of what they think the 20th century or what the 20th century was. And they're trying to resolve their problems with 20th century solutions. And it's not working here in 2023. And everybody is fighting. And it's like why everybody thinks that they're correct, because in their minds, they're correct based upon the reality that they're overlaying on the situation. And they're like, it's a big, huge discord, and the wheel needs to be realigned. But the problem is that even when you show direct, pure evidence of this discord and this evolution that needs to happen, they will find and it's called an epicycle. All right. It was done with the geocentric concept of the planets. And this goes all the way back to Ptolemy and the Great Library. And basically the planets, and this is all planets. If you look on this, these are all the planetary glyphs on here, and I have them, how they're all connecting with each other. And that's why this is a sister painting to The Wandering Wheel, where The Wandering Wheel are the astrological houses. These are the planetary glyphs. And both paintings are meant to be able to be overlapped with each other so that you can see how it all interacts with each other. But the problem with the geocentric concept, or the Earth-centered concept of the solar system, is what are called retrogrades. Now, the term planet means wanderer. And so it was given as a star that wanders across the sky. And basically, every once in a while, that planet is going across the sky, and then it stops, and then it goes backwards. This is retrograde, and then it goes back forward again. And that is ultimately being done because we are passing that planet as we're going around the sun in these circular orbits with the sun at the center. But everybody couldn't figure out why they were doing this with the Earth at the center, and they kept throwing up what was called epicycles. And it just ended up being circles within circles within circles to try to make the math work. And it just, no matter how, it was almost like Zeno's paradox. No matter how far they went, they still had more circles that they had to keep adding and ad infinitum on until eternity. And, it wasn't until the Renaissance when they were trying to adjust the calendar, and this is where it came from. In the Renaissance, leading into the Renaissance, Pope went to Nicholas Copernicus, got commissioned by the church to figure out why harvest was coming at the wrong time on the calendar. And at that time, it was like 2 weeks off. And it was mostly because of like this progression issue, and then also not having the year calculated correctly, where literally I forgot, it's like 1400 and something that the Pope basically decreed. It was like October the 14th, and basically the Pope came out. It's like, okay, tomorrow's October the 23rd. And he basically just like almost skipped 2 weeks to get the calendar caught up so that the seasons were matching the calendar. And, so, but yeah, I mean, it was just so funny. And I've had so many arguments with astrologers because they're not taking into consideration that the wheel that they are using to base their, whatever, like just their horror, like whatever, like their projections is faulty, and you can't talk to them about it because they will come up with epicycles to make their reality work. But then they just keep needing to add those epicycles to it. And they can't figure, well, maybe there's something wrong at the core of the system. Maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way. And, it's like these little tiny evolutionary conscious moments that we have in the collective that we're like, boop, our minds get blown and we realize that our reality is slightly different than what we thought it was. And I love those moments. It scares the bejesus out of a lot of people, but I like finding out that I am wrong and I've been looking at things the complete wrong way, because then a whole part of the universe opens up. Like you find a room in your house that you never knew existed. And wow, I got a new room to explore. I get to expand. So, anyhow, that got a little intense for a moment, but that's how it is. It's like, it's gotten to the point where I don't even argue with them anymore. All I'm going to do is I'm correcting the system the way that I see that it needs to be corrected. And I'm putting it out there so that somebody can make sense of it after I die. But it will work for me. And what's funny is when you do actually realign the astrological wheel to the current reckoning of the great year and the spring equinox, and you line it up, it starts to make more sense. It starts to be more accurate. And it's wild. It's really, really wild. And it's one of like the second I've had two mind-opening experiences in astrology. That was the second one. The first one was at my Saturn return. And what they call a Saturn return is the planet returning to the place on which you were born. And for Saturn, that's roughly around 27 or 28 years old. Uranus comes out around 78. You're never going to have a Neptune return because that's a 180-year orbit. So the first come to Jesus moment that I had with astrology was I went until I was 27 years old thinking I was a Taurus. And I would read what Taurus is about. And I'm like, this is not me. This doesn't fit. This doesn't make sense. This is bullshit. Astrology is bullshit. And I'm like, so I just ignored it. It's just like, it's nothing. I mean, astrology is garbage. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not these things. Okay, Taurans are stubborn, but that's probably because I'm Polish. But I was dating somebody, and they're like, "You're not a Taurus. You're an Aries." And I'm like, "What's an Aries?" And they're like, "Let me do your birth chart," because like, I would read the newspapers and it would say Taurus starts on April the 20th. And I'm like, okay, I'm a Taurus. So she did my birth chart, and ironically at my Saturn return, which is when you're supposed to realize everything's a lie and you come up to, you get open to the real self that you want to be. She comes back, she's like, yeah, you're an Aries. You're an Aries by 5 hours. And I went and I looked at what an Aries was, and like, oh my God, it was like discovering myself. Every single line item I was in Aries. And I'm like, it was like, woo! And that's when I took notice of, that's when I was like, okay, maybe there is something to astrology. So that's when I started studying it a little bit more. And that ultimately led me to doing the Wandering Wheel in 2007. And then that's what opened up to me that the wheel was out of alignment and it needed to be corrected. Because at the time, I had started working on doing a tarot deck. And because I was reading at that moment, by that time. And I realized I had to put the entire tarot deck onto the side because I had to spend the next decade fixing the astrological wheel. And, so anyhow, but what do I know? I'm an artist. Anyhow, that was an interesting ride today. It's only been an hour. I feel like I feel like I've traveled across the universe in this past hour. But I'll have to talk more about this piece, and I'll probably have to put this piece side by side with the Wandering Wheel and put that on the other side and just kind of show how they align with each other. But like in this piece, you got the sun in the middle, then there's Mercury, then there's Venus, and there's Mars, and then there's the moon, which kind of follows, and an Earth symbol kind of crosses and connects all of them together because these are all of the Earth planets. And then we get to the gas giants, which are Jupiter and then Saturn. And then you have the ice giants, which are Uranus and Neptune. And then I haven't even gotten to the Kuiper Belt, which Pluto is a part of. And I will argue to my dying day that Pluto is not a planet. It's a Kuiper Belt object. Just the way Ceres was demoted. Like, we argue about, I'll end on this, but we argue about Pluto, not like renaming Pluto and demoting Pluto. And it's not the first time that we've done this. It was roughly, I think it was like in about the early 1800s, from about 1820 to 1830, there were actually 12 planets or 11 planets because Neptune hadn't been discovered yet, because they started finding the asteroids, and Ceres was the first one that was found in 1801. And Ceres was labeled a planet. And then so was Pallas Athene, Pallas, and then so was Juno and Vesta. So then you had four new planets in the early 1800s. And then they realized that there was 100 of these other asteroids that were discovered. And then they realized that these four were not planets. They were part of something new that they just discovered. And that's what Pluto happened to be. Pluto just happened to be the first of this group of objects that are out now beyond, they're trans-Neptunian objects that are out there beyond that are something completely onto themselves, which kind of makes sense. Is Pluto is kind of or Hades is sort of the god of the underworld. So it's really fitting for that, for the demotion when you actually look at the reality of it. Whereas Pluto is now the king or the god of this whole new realm that's out beyond Neptune. So anyhow, you all have a brilliant day, and thank you for all of the inspiration in this conversation. This was a lot of fun. I was able to say a lot of things a lot clearly that I had always struggled with. So I was able to get a lot of things out here that I've been meaning to for a while. So you all have a great day, and I will see you next Saturday. There will be no Creative Coffee for Sunday, but I will be back next Saturday, and this time period looks like it's going to stick. So you all have a good day. I will talk to you later.